The wine glass shattered against white marble. 100 guests turned to stare. And Gerald Whitmore, billionaire philanthropist, foundation chairman, the man whose name opened political doors across 3 continents, laughed. Not politely, cruelly. "Good God," he said loud enough for the entire ballroom to hear. "They'll really hire anyone for these events now, won't they?" I froze. Red wine spread across the floor like a wound. My hands trembled as I dropped to my knees, grabbing napkins, scrubbing uselessly at the stain that had already soaked into the grout. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "I didn't mean—" "Of course you didn't mean to," a woman in diamonds interrupted, her voice dripping with amusement. "But that's the problem with lowering standards, isn't it? Competence becomes optional." Laughter rippled through the crowd, and I kept my head down. My wrist, the one I'd injured 3 weeks ago and couldn't afford to have properly treated, throbbed where I'd tried to balance the overloaded tray. I'd told the supervisor it was too heavy. She'd told me to stop complaining or find another job. Now I was on my knees in a $500 uniform I'd have to pay for, surrounded by people wearing watches worth more than my annual salary. Before I even tell you what happened, let me ask you this. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted most? If you have, you'll feel this story deep in your soul. And if you know that kind of pain, hit subscribe. Not because it helps me, but because stories like this remind us that sometimes silence and strength are the best revenge. Gerald stepped closer. His Italian leather shoes stopped inches from the wine stain. "Miss," he said, his tone shifting from amused to annoyed, "you've already embarrassed yourself enough. Please step away before you ruin the evening further." Embarrassed myself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him I had a master's degree in forensic accounting, that I used to expose financial crimes for a living, that 3 years ago, I'd destroyed my entire career to protect people exactly like him, people who smiled at galas while hiding millions in offshore accounts. But I knew how this worked. Excuses from someone like me were just noise. "I'll clean it," I said quietly, my voice breaking. "Please, I need this job." Gerald sighed like I was wasting his time. "Someone get her out of here," he announced. 2 security guards moved toward me. That's when I felt it. As the shift in the room, it was subtle, a pause in the conversations, a few heads turning toward the back of the ballroom. I didn't look up. I was too focused on the hands reaching for my arms, the humiliation burning through my chest, the reality that I was about to lose another job, another paycheck, another chance. But Gerald noticed. His expression flickered, just for a second, from confident superiority to something else. Confusion. Maybe concern. He glanced toward the back of the room. The security guards hesitated. That never happened around Gerald Whitmore. "Let her go." The voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The entire ballroom went silent. I finally looked up. A man stood near the back, tall, Korean, maybe late 30s, dressed in a black suit that didn't scream for attention but somehow commanded it anyway. His hair was perfectly combed back, his posture was relaxed, but his eyes were sharp, calculating, and they were locked on Gerald. I'd noticed him earlier in the evening, surrounded by men in dark suits who looked more like bodyguards than business associates. No one had approached him without invitation. No one had spoken over him. I didn't know his name, but clearly Gerald did. "Sir," Gerald said, forcing a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This is a private staff matter." "I said," the man repeated calmly, each word deliberate. "Let her go." The guard's hands fell away from my arms immediately. Gerald's jaw tightened. For the first time all night, someone in this room had more power than him. And he knew it. The man stepped forward. With each step, the tension in the ballroom coiled tighter. Guests whispered behind champagne flutes. A few pulled out phones. Someone near the orchestra pit actually gasped. Gerald straightened his tie, trying to regain control. I don't believe we've been formally introduced to— We haven't, the man interrupted. But I know exactly who you are, Gerald. The use of his first name, casual, dismissive, landed like a slap. Gerald's smile finally cracked. And who, he asked carefully, are you? The man stopped a few feet away. His gaze swept across the ballroom, taking in the guests, the chandeliers, the orchestra, the wealth displayed like armor. Then he looked down at me. Still on my knees, still surrounded by broken glass and spilled wine. For the first time that night, someone met my eyes without judgment, without pity, without cruelty. He looked at me like I was a person. My name, he said, his voice carrying across the silent room, is Kang Min-jae. Someone behind me inhaled sharply. CEO of Haneul Group. A woman near the bar dropped her champagne flute. Gerald's face went pale, and I realized, still kneeling on the floor, wine soaking through my uniform, humiliation burning through every nerve, this man hadn't come to rescue me. He'd come to use me. The question was why? To notice the setup until it was too late. The tray was heavier than usual. My supervisor knew my wrist was injured. She'd watched me wrap it that morning in the staff room, but she handed me the tray anyway. 12 wine glasses, full to the brim. Table 7, she said. Don't mess this up, Lisa. I should have known then. Table 7 was in the center of the ballroom, right under the chandelier, right where everyone could see. Gerald Whitmore sat at the head, billionaire philanthropist, foundation chairman, the kind of man politicians called for favors. He was mid-conversation with a woman in emeralds when I approached. I balanced the tray carefully. My wrist screamed. I set down the first glass, then the second. That's when Gerald shifted his chair. Not much, just enough. His elbow knocked the edge of my tray. The wine glass tilted. I tried to catch it. My injured wrist gave out. The glass fell. Red wine exploded across white marble. And Gerald Whitmore laughed. Not surprised. Not apologetic. He laughed, like he'd been waiting for it. Good God, he said, loud enough for the room to hear. They'll really hire anyone for these events now. 100 guests turned to stare. I froze. My supervisor appeared from nowhere, too fast, like she'd been watching, and grabbed my arm. Clean it up, she hissed. Now. I dropped to my knees, grabbed napkins, started scrubbing. That's when I noticed Gerald's shoes. Italian leather. $1,200, minimum. Not a single drop of wine on them. He'd moved his feet before the glass fell. He knew it was going to happen. My hands stopped moving. Wait, if he knew— I'm so sorry, I said automatically, my voice shaking. Of course you didn't mean to, a woman in diamonds said, smiling. But accidents happen when people work beyond their abilities, don't they? Laughter spread through the crowd. I kept scrubbing. My chest felt tight. This wasn't an accident. Gerald had bumped the tray on purpose. My supervisor had overloaded it on purpose. They'd planned this. But why? Gerald leaned down. His voice dropped low, just for me. You're Lisa Carter, aren't you? My blood went cold. I looked up. He was smiling. I thought so, he continued softly. Forensic accountant. Whistleblower. The woman who destroyed her career 3 years ago trying to expose financial fraud. Oh God. He knew. You filed a report, Gerald said. Very detailed. Very thorough. You accused some very powerful people of some very serious crimes. I couldn't breathe. And then, he continued, his smile widening, you buried it, hid the evidence, protected the people you were supposed to expose. I didn't— You did, Gerald interrupted, because they threatened you, and you broke. Tears burned my eyes. He straightened up, adjusting his cufflinks. So when I heard you were working tonight, he said casually, I thought it would be educational, For both of us. Educational. He humiliated me to prove a point, to remind me what happens to people who try to stand up and then fall down. Miss, Gerald said louder, addressing the crowd now. You've embarrassed yourself enough. Security will escort you out. 2 guards appeared. I stayed on my knees, frozen. This wasn't just cruelty. This was a message. Then someone spoke. Let her go. The voice came from the back of the room. Quiet, calm, absolute. Every conversation stopped. Gerald's expression flickered, just for a second, from smug satisfaction to something else. Confusion. Maybe fear. He turned toward the voice. I looked up. A man stood near the wall. Korean. Late 30s. Black suit. Perfectly tailored. He wasn't moving. Wasn't shouting. But every single person in that ballroom was staring at him. The security guard's hands fell away from my arms. Gerald forced a smile. Sir, this is a private... I said, the man repeated, stepping forward. Let her go. Gerald's jaw tightened. Someone near me whispered, Is that Kang Min-jae? Another voice. Oh my God. It is. The man, Min-jae, walked toward us. Slowly, deliberately. His eyes never left Gerald. And Gerald, for the first time all night, looked genuinely afraid. I need to tell you something before this goes any further. If you've ever been humiliated by someone who had all the power, someone who knew exactly what they were doing and did it anyway, you understand what I felt in that moment. You know that specific kind of anger. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that waits. If you've ever felt that, subscribe right now. Because what happens next isn't just revenge, it's education. And you'll want to remember every second. Min-jae stopped 3 feet from Gerald. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Do you know who you just humiliated? Min-jae asked. Gerald tried to recover his composure. She's a server who... Her name, Min-jae interrupted, is Lisa Carter, former forensic accountant. She filed a federal report 3 years ago exposing a charity foundation for laundering money through offshore accounts. The crowd murmured. Gerald's face went pale. Min-jae continued, his tone conversational. The foundation she exposed? It was called the Whitmore Foundation. Gasps erupted across the ballroom. That report, Min-jae said, detailed $12 million in fraudulent donations. Shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands. Bribes to federal auditors. Gerald opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Lisa buried that report, Min-jae said, looking at me for the first time. She hid the evidence. Protected you. I couldn't move. How did he know all this? Why did she do it? Min-jae asked the crowd, though he clearly already knew the answer. Because you threatened her family. Her mother specifically. Stage 4 cancer. Needed experimental treatment. You offered to pay for it, if Lisa made the evidence disappear. My throat closed. He knew everything. She saved your foundation, Min-jae said. Destroyed her own career, lost everything. He paused. And tonight, you repaid her by orchestrating her humiliation in front of 100 witnesses. Gerald finally found his voice. This is absurd. I don't know what your assistant overloaded her tray, Min-jae said calmly. Your supervisor assigned her to this table despite her injury. You bumped the tray yourself. He pulled out his phone. Tapped the screen. I have the security footage, Min-jae said. Would you like me to play it? Gerald went completely still. The room held its breath. Min-jae smiled. Not warm, not kind. Dangerous. You humiliated her to send a message, Min-jae said. To prove that people like Lisa, people who try to do the right thing and fail, deserve to stay broken. He put his phone away. But you made one mistake, Gerald. What mistake? Gerald whispered. You did it in front of me. Min-jae stepped closer. My name is Kang Min-jae, he said to the crowd. CEO of Haneul Group. I funded this gala. Several people gasped. Haneul Group wasn't just wealthy. It was untouchable. Rumored connections to political power, old money, darker things no one said out loud. I funded tonight's event, Min-jae continued, to see which of you were still comfortable watching cruelty and doing nothing. His gaze swept the ballroom. People looked away. Congratulations, Min-jae said softly. You revealed yourselves. He snapped his fingers. 2 men in dark suits appeared, definitely not event staff. Escort Mr. Whitmore out, Min-jae said. Inform the federal prosecutors the files will be delivered within the hour. Gerald finally panicked. You can't do this. You'll what? Min-jae asked. Sue me? With what money? The offshore accounts I already froze? Gerald's mouth opened, closed, opened again. You're finished, Min-jae said simply. The men grabbed Gerald's arms. He struggled. This is illegal. You can't. I just did, Min-jae said. As they dragged Gerald toward the exit, applause started. Hesitant at first, then louder. Not because anyone was brave, but because they knew which side was safe now. Min-jae turned to me. I was still on my knees, still surrounded by broken glass and wine. Stand up, he said quietly. I didn't move. Lisa, he repeated. Stand up. Slowly I got to my feet. My legs shook. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a business card. Tomorrow morning, he said. 9 a.m., Haneul Group headquarters. I stared at the card. Why? I whispered. Min-jae's expression didn't change. Because I don't reward victims, he said. I invest in people who survive. He turned to leave, then stopped, looked back. And Lisa? Yes? You shouldn't be on your knees, he said. Not ever. He walked away. The crowd parted, and I stood there, holding a business card, surrounded by people who'd watched me get humiliated, realizing I'd just been recruited into something I didn't understand. The next morning, my name was everywhere. Not as Lisa Carter, former forensic accountant, as the woman Gerald Whitmore tried to destroy. Again. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. News outlets, lawyers, people I hadn't spoken to in 3 years suddenly remembering my number. I said the headlines were brutal. Whitmore Foundation exposed as money laundering front. Billionaire philanthropist arrested after gala humiliation. Korean CEO destroys charity mogul to defend black server. That last one made my stomach turn. I wasn't defended. I was used. Min-jae had known everything about me before he ever stepped into that ballroom. He'd known about Gerald, about the buried report, about my mother. He'd waited, watched me get humiliated, and then made his move. That's not rescue. That's strategy. At 8:30 a.m., a black car pulled up outside my apartment. The driver didn't knock, just sent a text. Mr. Kang is waiting. I hadn't decided if I was going, but when I opened my door, there was an eviction notice taped to it. Rent overdue. 30 days to vacate. I looked at the car, then at the notice, then I got in. The headquarters took up an entire city block. Glass, steel, the kind of building that looked like it could survive a war. Security didn't ask my name. They were expecting me. The elevator took me to the 48th floor. No stops. The doors opened into an office that overlooked the entire city. Min-jae stood by the windows. Same black suit, same calm expression. Ms. Carter, he said without turning, you're early. You sent a car at 8:30 for a 9 o'clock meeting. I wanted to see if you'd come. He finally turned around. Most people don't, he said. After what happened last night, they're too afraid of what it means. And what does it mean? Min-jae smiled slightly. That you're exactly who I thought you were. He walked to his desk, picked up a folder, handed it to me. Director of Financial Integrity, he said. 500,000 annually. Full benefits, stock options. I stared at the folder. $500,000. I'd been making 32,000 serving at galas. What's the catch? I asked. Absolute loyalty. Min-jae pulled out another folder. Thicker. Your first assignment, he said. Someone's embezzling from my sole operations. 7-figure amounts. Very sophisticated. He set it on the desk between us. You have 72 hours to find them. I opened the folder. Financial records, transaction logs, subsidiary accounts. This was months of work. 72 hours is impossible, I said. For most people, yes. He leaned against the desk. But you're not most people, Lisa. You buried a federal investigation so thoroughly it took me 2 years to find the original evidence. My chest tightened. If you can hide fraud that well, Min-jae said, you can find it even better. I looked at the records again. Casino partnerships, real estate fronts, offshore transfers. Whoever was stealing knew exactly what they were doing. What happens if I can't find them? I asked. Min-jae's expression didn't change. Then you're not as valuable as I thought. He stood up. The car will take you home. You'll have access to our secure servers by noon. He walked toward the door, then stopped. One more thing, Lisa. What? Don't ask questions you're not ready to hear answers to. The door closed behind him. I stood there holding a job offer worth $500,000 and a test that felt like a trap. When I got home, the eviction notice was still on my door. Rent due, $4,000. Savings account, $632. And I opened Min-jae's folder, started reading. I didn't have a choice. I never did. It took me 16 hours to find the pattern. The embezzlement wasn't hidden. It was obvious. Too obvious. I worked through the night. Haneul's financial records were massive. Subsidiaries in 12 countries. Holdings in everything from real estate to pharmaceutical research. But the theft was concentrated in 3 areas. Casino operations in Seoul. Luxury hotel chains in Singapore. Private equity investments in Hong Kong. $7 million total. Moved through shell companies. Rerouted through offshore accounts. Transferred to holding corporations registered in the Cayman Islands. Professional work. But sloppy in one specific way. Every transaction was signed off by the same person, James Kwan, Chief Operating Officer, Min-jae's half-brother. I sent my preliminary report at 6 a.m. By 7, I was summoned back to headquarters, but not to Min-jae's office, to the executive conference room. James Kwan was waiting. He looked nothing like Min-jae. Western suit, easy smile, Yale Business School ring on his finger. Ms. Carter, he said, standing to shake my hand. I've heard so much about you. I hesitated, then shook it. Please sit, James said. Min-jae asked me to introduce myself. We'll be working closely together. He poured coffee, slid a cup across the table. I want you to know, James said, what my brother did for you last night was extraordinary. Min-jae doesn't intervene for people, ever. Then why did he? James smiled. Because he collects broken things, he said quietly. Damaged people. Talented people who've been destroyed by circumstances. He leaned back. He thinks if he rebuilds them, they'll be loyal. And are they? Some, James said. Others realize they've just traded one prison for another. I didn't touch the coffee. Why are you telling me this? I asked. James's smile faded. Because I've known my brother my entire life, he said. And I've watched him ruin people who thought they were being saved. He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo. A woman, Korean, maybe 40, beautiful. Her name was Dr. Sarah Chenaj Chen, James said. Brilliant oncologist. Min-jae recruited her to run our medical research division 5 years ago. What happened to her? She asked too many questions, James said, about where the funding came from. About certain trials that didn't have proper ethics approval. He put the phone away. She disappeared 6 months later. Officially, she resigned. Moved to Europe. And unofficially, James met my eyes. No one's heard from her since. My stomach dropped. I'm telling you this, James said, because you seem smart, capable, and my brother is very good at identifying people he can use. He stood up. Be careful, Ms. Carter. Min-jae doesn't save people. He walked to the door, paused. He collects them. After James left, I sat alone in the conference room, staring at my report. James Kwan's name on every fraudulent transaction. It was too clean, too perfect. Either James was the world's sloppiest embezzler, or someone wanted me to think he was. I pulled out my phone, started digging deeper, found the incorporation documents for the shell companies, found the signatures, found the dates. My hands stopped moving. The companies were registered 5 years ago, right after their father died, right when Min-jae took control of Haneul Group. And according to public records, their father's will left 40% of the company to James. But James didn't have 40%. Min-jae controlled everything. I closed my laptop. This wasn't an embezzlement investigation. This was a family war, and I'd just been handed a weapon. I submitted my report at midnight. By morning, James Kwan's office was empty. His name removed from the executive directory. His access credentials terminated. Like he'd never existed. Min-jae called me at 7 a.m. Well done, he said. Your findings were thorough. What happened to James? He's been removed as COO. The board voted unanimously. Based on my report? Based on evidence of financial misconduct. Silence. Ms. Carter, Min-jae said, you did exactly what I hired you to do. I found suspicious transactions. I didn't say he was guilty. The board disagreed. Did you show them the whole report? I asked. The part about the shell companies being registered 5 years ago, the part about your father's will? Another pause. Longer this time. That information wasn't relevant, Min-jae said finally. Oh, it's completely relevant. Those companies existed before James even had operational authority. Your job, Min-jae interrupted, his voice cold, is to find financial irregularities, not to question board decisions. The line went dead. I left the office at 9. Needed air, needed to think. The parking garage was empty, or I thought it was. You destroyed me. I spun around. James stood by a concrete pillar. He looked terrible. Hadn't slept. Still wearing yesterday's suit. I didn't. Yes, you did, James said. You gave Min-jae exactly what he needed. A forensic accountant with a ruined reputation willing to do whatever it takes to survive. He stepped closer. Do you even know what you found? Financial misconduct. Those transactions weren't embezzlement, James said. They were payments. To lawyers, investigators, forensic specialists. My breath caught. I've been building a case against Min-jae for 3 years, James continued, documenting his illegal operations, bribes to city officials, partnerships with organized crime, money laundering. He pulled out his phone, showed me photos. Min-jae meeting with men in expensive suits, cash-filled briefcases, handshakes in dark restaurants. My father wanted Haneul legitimate, James said. When he died, he left me 40% specifically to keep Min-jae in check. But Min-jae had the will suppressed, took complete control. Why didn't you fight him? I tried, James said. He had the original will destroyed, bribed the estate lawyers, made it look like I was lying. He put his phone away. So I started documenting everything, building evidence. Those suspicious transactions you found? They were my legal fees. My chest felt tight. Min-jae knew what I was doing, James said. He just needed a credible witness to justify removing me before I could finish. He looked at me. Congratulations, Ms. Carter. You just helped a criminal destroy the one person trying to stop him. James walked away. Left me standing in the parking garage. I pulled out my phone, looked at my report again. The transactions were suspicious, but they weren't necessarily theft. I'd presented the evidence. Min-jae had drawn the conclusions. Or had he? Had I drawn them for him without realizing it? I thought about Dr. Sarah Chen, the woman who asked too many questions. I went back inside, took the elevator to Min-jae's office. His assistant tried to stop me. I walked past her. Min-jae was on the phone. He looked up, ended the call. Ms. E. Carter? Was James stealing? I demanded. Min-jae stood slowly. That's what you determined. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you need. I stepped closer. You used me to destroy your brother. Min-jae's expression didn't change. I hired you to investigate financial irregularities. You found them. What the board chose to do with that information is not your concern. He was building a case against you. Was he? Min-jae walked around the desk. Or was he embezzling and using a conveniently noble excuse? He stopped in front of me. You're a forensic accountant, Lisa. You follow the money. The money led to James. The money led to legal fees. According to him, Min-jae interrupted. Do you have proof? I didn't. Then you did your job, Min-jae said. Nothing more, nothing less. You know what hurts the most? Not what they did, but that I still tried to make them proud after everything. I found the evidence Min-jae wanted. I presented it professionally. I did everything right, and I still destroyed an innocent man. If you've ever given people too many chances, if you've ever trusted the wrong person because you were desperate, you already understand this pain. Don't just scroll. Subscribe. Join people who've been through it too, because you deserve stories that make you feel seen. To pause 0.2 seconds. 3 days after James was removed, I received an invitation. Not from Min-jae. From his mother, Madam Kang Soo-jin. Lunch at the family estate. It wasn't a request. The car drove for 40 minutes outside the city. Through gates that opened automatically. Past gardens that looked like they belonged in museums. The house wasn't a house. It was a compound. Traditional Korean architecture mixed with modern security. Cameras everywhere. Guards in suits pretending to be landscapers. A woman met me at the entrance. Not a servant. Madam Kang herself. She was 64 but looked 50. Elegant. Perfectly composed. The kind of woman who didn't raise her voice because she never needed to. Miss Carter, she said. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure I had a choice. She smiled slightly. You always have a choice. Whether you recognize it is another matter. She led me through the house. Every room was pristine. Art on the walls worth more than my entire apartment building. We ate on a terrace overlooking a private lake. Madam Kang didn't make small talk. My son hired you 3 weeks ago, she said. You've already destroyed his half-brother's career. Impressive work. I just followed the evidence. Did you? She set down her tea. Or did you follow what my son wanted you to find? I didn't answer. James has always been weak, she continued. Emotional, sentimental like his father. But he wasn't a thief. Then why was his name on every transaction? Because Min-jae put it there. My stomach dropped. Madam Kang leaned back. My husband died 5 years ago. Suddenly. Heart attack, officially. Though the autopsy was never made public. She paused. He left 40% of Haneul to James. Not because James was capable, but because he knew Min-jae alone would be dangerous. Min-jae said the will wasn't executed. Min-jae lied. She pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. The original will, properly notarized. Legally binding. I opened it, read it. She was right. James was entitled to 40%. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because you're either very naive, Madam Kang said, or very desperate. I haven't decided which. She poured more tea. My son collects broken people, she said. Talented individuals who've been destroyed by circumstances. He offers them salvation, power, purpose. And in return, absolute loyalty. She met my eyes. He saved you from humiliation, gave you a prestigious position, made you feel valuable again. He did save me. No, Madam Kang said. He used your humiliation. There's a difference. She stood up, walked to the edge of the terrace. Min-jae has been planning to remove James for years. He just needed the right weapon. Someone credible. Someone desperate enough not to ask questions. I asked questions. After the damage was done. She turned around. I lost my husband to whatever violence exists in this family. I won't lose both my sons. Why tell me this? I asked. Why not stop Min-jae yourself? Because I'm his mother, she said simply. He'll never see me as a threat. She walked back to the table. But you, Ms. Carter, he'll underestimate until it's too late. Madam Kang sat down. James wasn't embezzling, she said. He was gathering evidence, documentation of Min-jae's illegal activities, proof of bribes, partnerships with criminal organizations, money laundering. Then where's the evidence now? Min-jae had his office cleared within hours, everything confiscated. She slid another document across the table. But James made copies, stored them securely. Insurance, he called it. Where? That, Madam Kang said, is what you need to find out. I stared at the document. You want me to betray Min-jae? I want you to save yourself, she corrected. Because my son doesn't save people, Ms. Carter. He collects them. She stood. And eventually, all collections need to be maintained. She walked toward the house, stopped at the door. One more thing. What? My son has never defended anyone publicly. Not me, not his father. But he defended you. Her expression softened slightly. Whatever you are to him, it's more than business, which makes you either very valuable or very dangerous. She left me on the terrace, alone, with documents that could destroy the man who saved me, or prove he never saved me at all. To pause 0.2 seconds. I confronted Min-jae that night. He was working late in his office. City lights stretched out behind him like he owned them. Maybe he did. Your mother invited me to lunch, I said. Min-jae didn't look up from his laptop. I know, I sent the car. You knew she'd tell me about James. Yes. He finally looked at me. And you came here anyway. Interesting. I threw the folder on his desk. She showed me your father's will. The real one. Min-jae glanced at it, closed his laptop. And? James was legally entitled to 40%. You stole his inheritance. I protected the company, Min-jae corrected. My father was sentimental. He thought splitting control would create balance. Instead, it would have created chaos. He stood up. James wanted to dismantle everything my father built. Make Haneul legitimate. Cut ties with partners who've ensured our survival for decades. Partners like organized crime? Partners like people who understand that power doesn't follow rules. He walked to the window. My father built this empire by making deals others were too afraid to make. When he died, James wanted to apologize for that, make amends. And you? I wanted to finish what he started. Min-jae turned around. James was gathering evidence against me. You're right, but that evidence doesn't prove I'm a criminal. It proves you're corrupt. It proves I'm effective, he said. There's a difference. He walked toward me. You've spent your entire life serving institutions that failed you, Lisa. The government, the justice system, charities that claim to help people while stealing from them. He stopped in front of me. I'm offering you something different. Real power, not the illusion of it. At what cost? Your outdated morality. He pulled out another folder. Vice President of Operations, $750,000 annually. Equity stake in the company. Board seat. I stared at the offer. $750,000. Real decision-making authority. What would I have to do? What you've already been doing, Min-jae said. Find problems, fix them, protect Haneul's interests. And if those interests are illegal, then you'll have enough money and power not to care. I should have walked away, should have refused, but I thought about my apartment, the eviction notice. 3 years of being invisible. I thought about Gerald Whitmore's smile as he humiliated me, the laughter that followed, and I thought about every system I'd trusted that betrayed me. I want immunity, I said. From what? Anything illegal you're planning. Written agreement that I'm not liable for decisions made before I had authority. Min-jae almost smiled. Done. And I want to know what happened to Dr. Sarah Chen. His smile faded. She asked too many questions. That's not an answer. It's the only one you'll get. I met his eyes. If I accept this, I said, I'm not your employee. I'm your partner. Agreed. And partners don't lie to each other. Min-jae extended his hand. Partners lie all the time, Lisa. They just do it strategically. I hesitated, then shook it. 3 weeks later, I attended my first board meeting as VP of Operations. I wore a suit that cost more than my monthly rent used to. I sat at a table with men who controlled billions. And when I spoke, they listened. Not because I was right, because I had power. I started making decisions, approving acquisitions, restructuring divisions, firing executives who questioned me. I was good at it, better than I expected. One night, Min-jae and I worked late reviewing a hostile takeover. You've changed, he said. Is that good or bad? He looked at me for a long moment. I haven't decided yet. Neither had I. Gerald Whitmore was released on bail 6 weeks after his arrest. The news alert woke me up at 3 a.m. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello, Lisa. Gerald's voice. I sat up in bed. How did you get this number? The same way I got everything else, he said. Money. Even from prison. Money talks. What do you want? To give you some advice. I hung up. The phone rang again. I stared at it. Let it ring 4 times. Answered. Kang Min-jae didn't save you, Gerald said immediately. He recruited you. There's a difference. I know what he did. Do you? Gerald laughed. Do you know who bought your forensic report 3 years ago? The one you filed against my foundation? My blood went cold. The report you buried to protect me? Gerald continued. Someone purchased it, paid a fortune for every page, every document, every piece of evidence. You're lying. Am I? He texted me something. A screenshot. Financial transaction. Offshore account. Payment of $250,000. Recipient. Forensic report. Carter investigation. Sender. Haneul Holdings, LLC. Date. 3 years ago. Min-jae bought your evidence before you even buried it, Gerald said. And I went to the office at 5 a.m., used my VP credentials to access archived financial records, searched Haneul Holdings, LLC, found the transaction. Gerald was right. Min-jae had purchased my report 3 years ago, before the gala, before I was humiliated, before he saved me. I dug deeper, found more transactions, payments to the Whitmore Foundation gala organizers, payments to my former supervisor, payments to security personnel. He'd funded the entire event, not to support charity, to create the conditions for my humiliation. My hands shook. I pulled up Gerald's case files, found the federal investigation timeline. The investigation started 2 weeks after the gala, right when Min-jae promised to deliver evidence, but the evidence wasn't new. It was 3 years old. My evidence, the report I'd buried. Min-jae had been holding it the entire time. Min-jae arrived at 7:30. I was waiting in his office. You bought my report, I said. 3 years ago. He set down his briefcase, took off his coat. Yes. No denial. No excuse. You orchestrated everything, I said. The gala, the overloaded tray, Gerald bumping my arm, the humiliation. I created an opportunity, Min-jae corrected. You chose to accept it. I stood up. You let them laugh at me. You watched me get dragged across that floor like I was nothing. I watched you survive it. You could have stopped it before it started. And then what? Min-jae asked. You'd have remained a failed accountant working minimum wage jobs. Invisible. Powerless. He walked closer. I gave you the chance to be something more. By humiliating me first? By showing you what you were capable of when pushed. I stepped back. Why? I whispered. Why me? Min-jae was quiet for a moment. Because 3 years ago, you filed the most comprehensive forensic report I've ever seen. You documented fraud so thoroughly that even when you tried to bury it, the structure remained perfect. He paused. Then I learned why you buried it. Not because you were corrupt, because you were desperate. Your mother was dying. Gerald offered to pay for treatment if you made the evidence disappear. So you waited. I waited to see if you'd survive losing everything. Most people don't. He met my eyes. You did. I felt tears burning. You had no right. I had every right, Min-jae interrupted. Gerald was going to destroy you anyway. Slowly, quietly, by keeping you dependent on him while ensuring you never recovered professionally. So you destroyed me faster? I gave you a choice, he said. Suffer meaninglessly, or suffer with purpose. I slapped him, hard. My palm connected with his face. He didn't move, didn't flinch, just looked at me. Feel better? He asked quietly. No. Good, Min-jae said. Anger means you're finally understanding how power works. He touched his cheek where I'd hit him. Power isn't given, Lisa. It's taken, usually through pain. He walked to his desk, sat down. You can leave if you want. I won't stop you. I stood there, shaking, hating him, hating myself more, because I wasn't going to leave. We both knew it. Now you understand, Min-jae said. Understand what? That we're the same. To pause 0.2 seconds. The package arrived at my apartment 2 days later. No return address, just my name. Inside, a USB drive and a handwritten note. He's lying about everything. Meet me. J. James. I plugged in the drive. Files loaded. Hundreds of them. Photos of Min-jae meeting with men in expensive suits. Cash exchanges. Handshakes in private rooms. Financial records showing bribes to city officials. Payments to offshore accounts tied to known criminal organizations. Contracts for weapons shipments. False documentation for pharmaceutical trials. Bank transfers connected to human trafficking operations. My stomach turned. This wasn't just corporate corruption. This was organized crime, and I was the vice president of operations. The note at the bottom of the folder read, "You're not his partner. You're his accomplice." James chose a coffee shop in a neighborhood Min-jae would never visit. He looked worse than before, thinner, tired. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You sent me evidence of felonies." "I sent you the truth." I sat down. "Why now?" "Because Min-jae is planning something," James said. "Something big, and you're part of it whether you know it or not." He pulled out his phone, showed me a document. Haneul Group merger proposal with a pharmaceutical company, Solux Medical. "This company conducts illegal drug trials," James said. "Pays people in poverty to test experimental treatments. No oversight, no safety protocols." "How do you know?" "Because I've been investigating them for 2 years," James said. "They're a front for manufacturing counterfeit medications. Selling them in developing countries." He swiped to another document. "Min-jae is merging with them next month. Once that happens, Haneul becomes legally liable for everything Solux has done." "Then he's destroying his own company." "No," James said. "He's using you to legitimize it." James leaned forward. "As VP of Operations, you'll be asked to approve the merger. Your forensic background gives it credibility. Your signature makes it legal. I won't sign it." "Then he'll replace you." James pulled out another folder. "But if you help me, we can stop him." How? Give me access to Haneul's secure servers. I need documentation proving Min-jae knowingly merged with a criminal organization. That would destroy Haneul. It would destroy Min-jae, James corrected. The company can survive with new leadership. He slid the folder across the table. I'm not asking you to betray him for me. I'm asking you to save yourself. By destroying the company I work for? By stopping a criminal before you become one too. I looked at the folder, thought about the evidence on the USB drive, thought about Min-jae watching me get humiliated, buying my report 3 years ago, orchestrating everything. What do you want from me? I asked. Server access, James said. Just for 24 hours. I'll handle the rest. And if I do this, I'll give you the company. Clean, legal, legitimate. He meant it. I could see it in his eyes. Min-jae will come after you, I said. He's already destroyed me. What else can he do? James stood up. Think about it, Lisa. But think fast. The merger vote is in 3 weeks. He left. I sat there holding a folder that could end everything. My career, my power, my partnership with a man who'd used me from the beginning. I took the folder home, started reading. By midnight, I'd made my decision. I was going to help James, not because I trusted him, but because I needed leverage against both brothers, and the only way to get it was to play them against each other. I gave James access to the servers, but I also copied everything he downloaded. If he was lying, I'd know. If he was telling the truth, I'd have proof. Either way, I'd have power. James worked fast. Within 48 hours, he'd extracted financial records, internal memos, encrypted communications between Min-jae and Solux executives. I monitored everything from my apartment. He watched the files transfer, read them as they appeared. James was right. Min-jae knew exactly what Solux was doing. The illegal trials, the counterfeit medications, the deaths in overseas clinics. He knew. And he was merging anyway. But there was something else, buried in the communications, references to project clearance, payments to federal regulators, bribes to inspection committees. Min-jae wasn't just merging with a criminal organization. He was paying officials to ignore it. I saved everything to an encrypted drive, created backups, stored them in 3 separate locations. James thought he was using me. Min-jae thought he controlled me. Neither knew I was building my own case. Min-jae called me into his office 3 days before the merger vote. The board is concerned, he said. About what? About whether you're still loyal. He pulled out a document. Solux merger approval. I need your signature, Min-jae said. As VP of Operations, your endorsement carries weight. I looked at the document. Everything James said was true. Signing this made me complicit. Refusing meant losing everything. What does Solux actually do? I asked. Pharmaceutical research and development. And the trials? Min-jae's expression didn't change. Conducted within legal parameters. Are they? He leaned back. Does it matter? It matters to me. Why? Min-jae asked. You've approved 3 hostile acquisitions in the past month. Fired 47 employees, restructured divisions that put hundreds out of work. That's business. So is this, Min-jae said. The only difference is you're asking questions now. He slid a pen across the desk. Sign it, Lisa. I picked up the pen. Min-jae watched. I thought about James's evidence, about the USB drive hidden in my apartment, about the copies I'd made. I thought about power. Real power, the kind that doesn't ask permission. I signed. Min-jae smiled slightly. Good choice. I stood up. When does the merger finalize? 2 weeks. After the board votes. And if they vote against it? They won't, Min-jae said, because you just gave them a reason to approve it. I walked to the door, stopped. Min-jae? Yes? What happened to Dr. Sarah Chen? He was quiet for a moment. She made the wrong choice. Which was? trusting that truth matters more than power. I left his office, went straight to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and pulled out my phone, texted James. I signed it. Board votes in 2 weeks. His response came immediately. Perfect. That's all we needed. I stared at the message. Then I texted someone else. A private investigator I'd hired 3 weeks ago. Find everything on James Kwan. I need it in 72 hours. I wasn't helping James destroy Min-jae. I wasn't helping Min-jae eliminate James. I was building leverage against both of them. Because the only person I trusted anymore was myself. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. At 9:45, James made his move. Federal investigators arrived at Haneul headquarters with warrants. I was in the conference room when security announced the investigators. The board members looked confused. Min-jae's face went completely blank. That's when I knew. James had timed this perfectly. The investigators entered, flashed badges. We have warrants to seize financial records related to the Solux merger, the lead agent said. On what grounds? Min-jae asked calmly. Conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, bribery of federal officials. The room went silent. We also have warrants for the arrest of Kang Min-jae. Min-jae didn't move, didn't panic. He just looked at me. And in that moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. Vulnerability. This is absurd, one of the board members said. On whose evidence? The lead investigator pulled out a folder. Anonymous tip. Supported by internal documents showing financial misconduct, illegal partnerships, and bribery. He looked at Min-jae. Documents provided by someone with access to your secure servers. The board turned toward Min-jae. He stood slowly. I assume you have proof of these allegations? We have testimony, the investigator said, from James Kwan, your half-brother. He's agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for immunity. Min-jae's jaw tightened. That was the only sign of emotion. Additionally, the investigator continued, we have corroborating evidence from your vice president of operations. Every head turned toward me. My heart stopped. What? I whispered. The investigator looked at me. Ms. Carter. Yeah, your signature appears on multiple documents approving the Solux merger. Documents that authorize illegal activity. No, this wasn't the plan. James said he'd destroy Min-jae. He didn't say he'd frame me too. I stood up. I signed those documents based on information provided by the CEO. I had no knowledge of illegal activity. Your forensic background suggests otherwise, the investigator said. You're trained to identify financial irregularities. Either you knew and approved them, or you're incompetent. The board members whispered. I looked at Min-jae. He was watching me, waiting. I want to make a statement, I said. The investigator nodded. I pulled out my phone, opened the encrypted files, the ones I'd copied when James accessed the servers. I have evidence, I said, that James Kwan fabricated documents to frame his brother. The room exploded. What evidence? The investigator demanded. I sent the files to the conference room screen. They loaded. Emails between James and offshore legal firms, payments to document forgers, communications discussing how to build a case against Min-jae using falsified records. The investigator's expression changed. Where did you get these? I monitored James's server access, I said. When he extracted files, I copied everything, including his communications with his own team. I pulled up another document. James didn't just gather evidence, he created it. The investigator looked at his team, looked at the documents. We need to verify this. Verify it now, Min-jae said, his voice cold. You came here to arrest me based on fabricated evidence from a disgruntled half-brother attempting a corporate coup. He walked toward the investigators. Ms. Carter just proved that your entire case is based on forged documents. If you proceed, I'll personally ensure every one of you loses your badge for wrongful prosecution. The lead investigator hesitated, looked at the evidence again, made a call, spoke quietly, hung up. We need to take this back for analysis, he said finally. Do that, Min-jae said. "And bring James Kwan in for questioning, for fraud, for falsifying federal evidence, for conspiracy." The investigators left. The board sat in stunned silence. Min-jae looked at me. "Well done, Ms. Carter." When I finally stood my ground, they called me heartless. But tell me, where were they when I was breaking? And I spent weeks playing both sides, letting James think I was helping him, letting Min-jae think I was loyal. And when the moment came, I chose myself. If you've ever had to choose peace over people, this channel is your space. Subscribe, not for me, but for every quiet soul who took their power back. After everyone left, Min-jae and I stood alone in the conference room. "You've been investigating James," he said. "I've been investigating everyone." "Including me?" "Especially you." He almost smiled. "I've underestimated you twice now. I won't make that mistake again." I picked up my laptop. "Good, because I'm done being underestimated." I walked toward the door. "Lisa." I stopped. "Thank you." I didn't turn around. "Don't thank me." This wasn't loyalty. What was it? Self-preservation. I left him standing there. For the first time since we met, I had leverage. And he knew it. To pause 0.2 seconds. James was arrested that afternoon, charged with falsifying evidence, conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice. The news played on every screen in the building. Min-jae called me to his office at 6 p.m. The city lights made him look almost human. "You saved me," he said. "I saved myself," I corrected. "You just happened to benefit." He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed me one. "You had evidence against both of us. You could have destroyed me alongside James. Why didn't you?" "Because James lied to me," I said. "He told me he wanted to make Haneul legitimate. Instead, he wanted to frame us both and take over himself." I took a drink. "At least you're honest about being corrupt." Min-jae laughed. Actually laughed. I've never heard anyone say that like it's a compliment. It wasn't. He walked to the window. "I need to know something, Lisa." "What? Are you planning to destroy me eventually?" I thought about lying, decided against it. "I haven't decided yet." Min-jae nodded slowly. "Fair enough." He turned around. "I'm giving you 20% equity in Haneul. Board seat, full voting rights." I set down my glass. "Why?" "Because you've proven you're not afraid to act, even against me. That makes me dangerous." "Exactly," Min-jae said. "Which makes you valuable. Dangerous people I can buy are useless. Dangerous people I can't control are essential." He pulled out a contract. "Partnership. Actual partnership. You have authority over operations, finances, and strategic decisions. I can't overrule you without board approval. And in return? Loyalty. Real loyalty. Not the kind that comes from fear or desperation. The kind that comes from mutual benefit." I read the contract. It was legitimate. Real power. Real protection. "There's one more thing," I said. "What?" "I want complete immunity from anything illegal you've done or plan to do. Written agreement that I'm not liable." "Done. And I want to know what happened to Dr. Sarah Chen." Min-jae was quiet. "She's alive," he said finally. "Living in Prague. Under witness protection." "Why?" "Because she discovered something she shouldn't have. Instead of burying her, I gave her a choice. Disappear with enough money to start over, or stay and face people who wouldn't be as generous." "Who?" "Partners I don't control." He met my eyes. "I'm ruthless, Lisa, but I'm not a killer." I picked up the pen, signed the contract. Min-jae signed below me. "Partners," he said. "Partners," I repeated. We shook hands. "One question," I said. "What?" "If I'd chosen James instead of you, would you have destroyed me?" Min-jae smiled. "Absolutely." "Fair enough." As I left, Min-jae called out. "Lisa?" "Yes?" "James will come after you now. From prison. Through lawyers. Through whatever connections he has left." "I know." "You'll need protection." "I'll handle it." Min-jae walked over. handed me a phone. "This connects directly to my security team. Use it if you need to." I looked at the phone, then at him. "Why do you care?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because you're the only person who's ever seen me clearly and stayed anyway." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just took the phone and left. But I didn't throw it away, and we both knew what that meant. To pause 0.2 seconds. James made bail 2 weeks later. The first thing he did was call a press conference. The second thing he did was destroy my life. Again. I was in my office when the news broke. Former executive claims Black VP enabled corporate crime spree. My stomach dropped. I opened the article. James had given interviews to every major outlet. He claimed I'd knowingly approved illegal mergers, that I'd falsified documents to protect Min-jae, that I was complicit in everything from money laundering to bribery. And he had a partner, Gerald Whitmore, released on bail, disgraced, broke, but still connected. Together they painted a picture: the corrupt Korean CEO and his black enabler, the woman who sold out her principles for power. Within hours, my face was everywhere. Social media exploded. Comments flooded in, most of them racist, all of them cruel. By afternoon, protesters gathered outside Haneul headquarters. They carried signs: "Fire Lisa Carter, corporate criminal, black face of white crime." That last one made me physically sick. News vans lined the street. Reporters shouted questions. My phone rang constantly. I stopped answering. My mother called from the facility where she was still recovering. "Lisa, what's happening? They're saying terrible things." "It's not true, Mom." "Then why aren't you defending yourself?" I didn't have an answer. Because how do you defend yourself when the accusation is partially true? I had approved those mergers. I had signed those documents. And I just hadn't known the full extent of what they contained. Or maybe I had. Maybe I'd chosen not to ask. The board called an emergency meeting. They wanted me to resign. For the good of the company, they said. Min-jae attended remotely. Silent, watching. I sat at that table surrounded by men who'd applauded my decisions 2 weeks ago. Now they wanted me gone. "Ms. Carter," the chairman said, "given the public scrutiny and allegations of misconduct, we believe it's best if you step down voluntarily." "I haven't been charged with anything." "Not yet," another board member said. "But the optics are damaging. The protests, the media coverage, the racism," I said quietly. The room went silent. "This isn't about race," the chairman said quickly. "Isn't it?" I asked. "James Kwan committed actual fraud. Gerald Whitmore ran a money laundering operation. Both are white men who get bail and press conferences." I stood up. "I'm a black woman who did her job based on information provided by her CEO, and you want me to resign to protect the company's image." "Ms. Carter." "No," I interrupted. "I'm not resigning." That's when Min-jae spoke. His voice came through the speaker. Calm, absolute. "Ms. Carter is not resigning." The board members looked at each other. "Mr. Kang," the chairman said carefully, "the public pressure is manufactured by a disgraced embezzler and a convicted fraudster." Min-jae interrupted. "If this board forces out the most competent executive we have because of a smear campaign, then none of you deserve your positions." Silence. "Ms. Carter stays," Min-jae continued. "Anyone who votes otherwise can submit their own resignation." The line went dead. The chairman looked around the table. No one spoke. "Meeting adjourned," he said finally. I went to Min-jae's office afterward. He was there, in person this time. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "Yes, I did." "Why?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Because my son has never defended anyone publicly, not even me." I recognized the words. His mother had said them. "Madam Kang told you she talked to me." "She tells me everything," Min-jae said. "Eventually." He stood up, walked over. "They're coming after you because you're effective, and because attacking you hurts me." I can handle it. I know, Min-jae said. But you shouldn't have to. Not alone. He meant it. For the first time, I saw something in his eyes that looked almost like care. Well, what do we do? I asked. Min-jae smiled. Not the dangerous smile, the real one. We finish this. To pause 0.2 seconds. I spent 3 days planning. Not revenge, justice. There's a difference. Min-jae and I worked around the clock. We compiled evidence, real evidence, against James, against Gerald, against everyone who tried to destroy us. But we needed more than documents. We needed a stage. Shareholder meeting, I said. Next week. It's already scheduled. Open to the public. Broadcast live. Min-jae looked at me. You want to expose them publicly? I want to give them exactly what they gave me. Humiliation. In front of everyone. He smiled. I knew I chose correctly. We spent 72 hours preparing, organizing evidence into presentations, building timelines, documenting every lie James and Gerald had told. And I didn't sleep. Didn't eat much. Just worked. Because this wasn't about winning anymore. This was about making sure they never touched anyone else. The shareholder meeting was packed. Media everywhere. Protesters outside. James and Gerald sat in the front row, confident, smiling. They thought they'd already won. The chairman opened the meeting, standard announcements, financial reports. Then he said, "We have a special presentation from our Vice President of Operations, Lisa Carter." I walked to the podium. Every camera turned toward me. James's smile widened. He thought I was resigning. "Good morning," I said. "I'm here to address allegations made by James Kwan and Gerald Whitmore regarding my conduct and the conduct of Haneul Group." I pulled up the first slide. Let's start with the truth. I presented systematically. No emotion. Just facts. James Kwan claimed I approved illegal mergers knowingly. Here's the timeline of what actually happened. I showed emails, dates, times, proof that James had altered documents before they reached my desk. These are the original contracts. These are the versions I received. Notice the differences. Gasps from the audience. James's smile faded. Mr. Kwan systematically falsified information to frame both myself and CEO Kang Min-jae while attempting a hostile takeover. I pulled up the next slide. Financial records showing James's payments to document forgers, communications with offshore legal teams, his plan, laid out in detail. This isn't corporate disagreement, I said. This is conspiracy. Then I turned to Gerald. Gerald Whitmore has positioned himself as a victim of corporate malfeasance. Let's examine that claim. I showed the original forensic report, the one I'd filed 3 years ago. This report documented $12 million in fraud. Mr. Whitmore threatened my family to bury it. I pulled up medical records. My mother needed cancer treatment. Mr. Whitmore offered to pay for it if I made evidence disappear. The room went completely silent. I made the evidence disappear, I said, and I've regretted it every day since. I showed the next slide. But here's what Mr. Whitmore didn't know. I kept copies, all of them. Federal investigation documents, proof of money laundering, shell companies, bribes, everything. I gave these documents to federal prosecutors yesterday morning. Gerald stood up. "This is slander. I'll sue." "With what money?" I asked. "The offshore accounts that were frozen this morning?" Security moved toward him. I turned back to the crowd. I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to expose a coordinated attack by 2 disgraced men who couldn't accept that a black woman from nothing now sits on the board of a billion-dollar company. I let that hang. They humiliated me at a gala, dragged my name through the media, called me a criminal. I pulled up the final slide. Photos of the protesters outside, the racist comments on social media, the death threats sent to my office. They weaponized racism and misogyny because they knew it would work, Because they knew people would believe that a black woman in power must have gotten there through corruption. The cameras kept rolling. But here's what they didn't count on. I looked directly at James, then at Gerald. I kept every receipt. Federal agents entered the room. James tried to run. Security blocked him. Gerald just sat down, defeated. The agents read them their rights: conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, witness intimidation. They were handcuffed, let out. The room erupted, not in applause, in chaos. Reporters shouting questions, shareholders demanding answers. The chairman tried to restore order, failed. Min-jae stood up, walked to the podium, took the microphone. Ms. Carter is not resigning, he said clearly. She is being promoted to Chief Operating Officer, effective immediately. The room went silent. Anyone who has a problem with that, Min-jae continued, can sell their shares, today. He looked at me, nodded once, and walked off the stage. I stood there, in front of everyone who doubted me, everyone who'd laughed, everyone who'd assumed I didn't belong. And I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The images on the screen said everything. To pause 0.2 seconds. 6 months later, I sat in the office that used to be James's, Chief Operating Officer. The same building where I'd once scrubbed wine off marble floors. Haneul Group was different now. Cleaner. Not clean, but cleaner. I'd restructured operations, cut ties with questionable partners, implemented oversight committees, hired external auditors. Profits dropped 15%. The board complained. I didn't care. We were legitimate now. Mostly. Min-jae still operated in shadows I chose not to look into. We had an understanding. I handled the legal operations. He handled everything else. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, at least between us. My mother recovered fully. The treatment worked. She moved into a better facility, called me every Sunday. I still hadn't told her everything. Probably never would. My old friends stopped calling after the media storm. Couldn't handle the attention, the judgment. I understood. I'd become someone they didn't recognize. Harder, sharper, less forgiving. I looked in the mirror sometimes and barely recognized myself. The woman who'd cried on that ballroom floor felt like a different person. She was. I'd killed her. Or maybe she'd killed herself. Either way, she was gone. Min-jae came to my office late one evening. Rare for him to visit me. Usually I went to him. We have a problem, he said. What kind? James is planning something from prison. Through lawyers. Through connections we didn't know he had. He handed me a file. I opened it. Illegal motions. Appeals. Requests for investigation into Haneul's current operations. He won't stop, Min-jae said. Neither will we. Min-jae sat down, looked at me. I need to ask you something. What? Do you regret it? Any of it? I thought about the question. Really thought. I regret that it was necessary, I said finally. I don't regret surviving. He nodded slowly. We're not partners because we trust each other, I continued. We're partners because we're both too dangerous to be alone. Min-jae smiled. Actually smiled. You said that to me once before. It's still true. He stood up, walked to the window. You know what you've become, don't you? What? What I am. I joined him at the window. The city stretched out below us. The same city that humiliated me. The same elites who laughed. They didn't laugh anymore. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I was always this person, just waiting for permission to stop apologizing. Min-jae looked at me. Do you think you're a good person, Lisa? No, I said honestly. Do you? No. We stood there in silence. Two people who'd done terrible things for survival, who'd continue doing them. Because power doesn't come from being good. It comes from being willing to do what others won't. James will come after us again, Min-jae said. I know. Gerald's lawyers are filing appeals. I know. There will always be someone. I know, he turned to face me. And you're ready? I thought about the girl who filed that forensic report, who believed in justice, who thought doing the right thing mattered. She'd been destroyed. What rose from those ashes was something else entirely. I'm ready, I said. As sometimes revenge isn't about payback, it's about peace. I didn't destroy James and Gerald because I hated them. I destroyed them because they thought I couldn't. Because they saw a black woman struggling and decided she deserved it. And if this story touched you, subscribe right now. Because somewhere out there, another person is watching in silence, needing a reminder that they're not alone. And your one click might help them find it. To pause 0.2 seconds. Min-jae left my office. I stayed by the window, watching the city, thinking about the woman I used to be. The woman who believed systems would protect her, who thought hard work and honesty were enough. She was gone, and I didn't mourn her. Because the woman standing here now, she owned 20% of a billion-dollar empire. She sat on the board. She made decisions that affected thousands of lives. She was powerful, untouchable, dangerous. And when people saw her walking down the street, they didn't see a maid who spilled wine. They saw the woman who destroyed two men who thought they could break her. They saw the woman who partnered with a Korean billionaire and built an empire. They saw someone who took every weapon used against her and turned it into armor. They laughed when she spilled wine. They stopped laughing when she took everything they had. And the Korean billionaire? He didn't save her. He just recognized what she always was: untouchable.